would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. We're back again, folks. Today is Thursday, October 27th, 2016. Creeping our way up to Monday night, Halloween. Hopefully a fun night for one and all. I have no idea how many more scary season theme shows I'm going to do between now and then. But I don't have anything on the docket for today. We may just have some interesting news, I think, today to discuss. Maybe some scary news tomorrow. As always, the best place to reach out is going to be the website. TheRebelBroker.com is the URL, so head on over there. There are a few changes going on over at the website. You'll probably notice the menus are changing. Things are getting rearranged a little bit. If you'd like to get in contact with me, though, the same method applies. Just click on Email the Rebel Broker. You can send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions you might have. I'll be happy to take a look at them. If you'd prefer to email me directly, just send that to therebel@therebelbroker.com. It all goes to the same place, so I'm not going to miss it. Also, if you'd like to get yourself included in the drawing for a $50 gift certificate or gift card to Amazon.com, just click on the button at the very top of the page, big red button. It says, take the survey to support the show. Use the same email address both times you're asked, and then answer the 5 or 6 general questions, and you're in. You are in the drawing. We had a drawing in October where one listener won that $50 gift card. We're going to do another one in November. So you still have plenty of time to get in, and it wouldn't surprise me if we continue this on for several months. And you'll be included if by we don't start over again at the end of each month. If you register or enter through that process, you'll be included on all future drawings. So good luck to all of those who have taken the time to enter their information. And also thank you, because not only are you getting yourself entered to potentially win $50, you're also helping the show grow. So that's primarily what this is about. And I truly appreciate all you who have taken some time to do that. And I look forward to rewarding one of you with that $50. The other thing you can do if you'd like is get in on the Rebel Underground. To participate in that, just send the word, text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker, all one word, to the number 44222. Follow the prompt. You'll get a reply that says, hey, thanks for considering joining the Rebel Underground. Please reply with your email address, and then you will be entered as a member of the Rebel Underground, where you're going to get inside info into a lot of different things way before they come around. And you'll also get stuff that the folks who opt in are the only ones who are going to get it. So do feel free to take a couple of minutes out to send that along as well if you'd like. Any other housekeeping? Yeah, so let me give you an update on the changes. So as you know, changes have been sort of incrementally coming. One thing I've shared with you all is that I'm interested in growing the show so that I can spend more time on the show delivering information to you in different ways, probably leveraging off of YouTube a bit more in terms of having video-specific content that you can use and hopefully learn from, or at least maybe get some insights from. Another thing that I've decided to go ahead and implement is I've got a ton of different real estate books in my library. So what I'm going to do is, one way you can support the show is go over to therebelbroker.com. There's going to be a link titled the store. And for right now, all that's going to be there is going to be one section that's just all real estate books, and not necessarily books I own, but just a way for you to search on every single kind of real estate book there is. And by purchasing them, you're supporting the show. A little bit of what you spend ends up getting credited towards the show. Then I'll have another section just of books that are in my library, books that I have read, books that I considered to be good sources of information for me personally. So those will be in there. And then there'll be another section just with general cool real estate stuff. I've come across a lot of odds and ends that I've used in suggestions to clients when we're doing various types of remodels, things that added features at a very cost-effective rate to make it worth the installation. So I'll go ahead and include links to items like that as well wherever I can. So again, you'll find that at the website, therebelbroker.com. It's not up yet. I set all the back end up stuff for it. So that should be up there within the next couple of days. So it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the weekend, that's all up and running. And it'll give you an opportunity to do the kind of shopping you've probably done on Amazon already. But by doing it this way, you'll be helping out the show. So I appreciate that. And, yeah, take advantage of that, and it would be great. I'd really appreciate it. So let's start off with some ground truth relating to what I'm seeing in terms of the marketplace. Now, we've talked a little bit about how things seem to be shifting. It feels like we're approaching a pivot point, and no telling how long this pivot will last. It sure feels like one to me, and there have been a few over the last decade. Some more obvious than others, some happening in relatively compressed periods of time. I'm not sure how long this one might last, but it sure does feel like we're seeing a change, whether we're talking about whether we're talking about declines in rentals in places like New York and Silicon Valley, or we're talking about kind of really eerie similarities between the kinds of lending practices that are going on now versus what was going on just before the downturn before, whether we're talking about folks going more into debt just before the downturn last time. All kinds of different things are pointing to some interesting changes in the marketplace. And I thought because I'm always shopping, I have a couple of different searches that are running out there. I've got ones looking for multi-unit properties. I've got ones running for dual purpose commercial properties, meaning that it may be commercial, but it's also zoned dual so that it could also be residential. And I've got single family residential searches going really for the most popular style of home that folks tend to look for. And I've got some very interesting information here that I thought I would share. Now, first, I'll go ahead and share with you my personal search that I have running. Now, at any given time, I have typically had, let me look at this in list form so that I can just show you or discuss with you what I've got. Now, this is a search I've had running for a while, and the active list always only shows me things that are currently active, properties that are available. And what I'm noticing is a odd number of new listings occurring on a regular basis. And I'm also noticing an odd number of homes that are staying on the market longer. So on average, over the last, since almost this time last year, this list has been through constant rotation. I see a property pop up on it. I take a look at it. I decide whether or not I want to make an offer on it. And what I have found is that they tended to disappear after literally just a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks tops, many much faster than that. So at any one time, I probably had anywhere from 6 to 10 properties that were active on this list. I have not changed any of the search parameters. They're all exactly the same maximum amount listed, same minimum number of bedrooms, same region. Today, I see 31 active listings currently available. Of those 31 listings, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them have had price reductions recently. Let's see, when was that one? That one was 2 months ago. And that one was 2 months ago. That one was just a few days ago, just a few days ago, just a few days ago, just a few days ago. Most of these are in October, 2 in September, and looks like a couple in August. But kind of interesting, right? One property that's had a price increase. I'm not real sure what they're thinking there, but it was increased by $4,100. It was listed just below $499, and it was just below $500, and now because they've raised it the way they've raised it, it's $504,000. Just as a tip on that one, if you're listening to me, the person who either owns this house or the agent who listed this house, that is without a doubt the dumbest price increase I have ever seen. I'm not sure what your strategy here is. The property has only been on the market for 15 days, which is half the average days on market for that marketplace. So I have no clue what the hell you're thinking. And you've raised it above 500,000. So now anyone who had their limits at 500,000 will no longer see this property. And 500. So anyway, that's a goofy place to raise your price to. Anyway, other things that are interesting to note about this list is, given the areas where they are, I'm seeing homes that are priced in absolutely the sweet spot. In other words, average price for the city or area or less, and they're still staying on the market forever. I'm seeing homes at the top of the list here in both Morgan Hill and Gilroy. Now, the home that's been on the market the longest is in Morgan Hill, which is very odd. It's had a $10,000 price cut, and it's been on the market for 137 days. And then 3 properties that are all in Gilroy on the market 135, 123, and 93 days respectively. And then it continues on down, where what's really interesting is that sort of the median point is over the 30, let's see, God, if we average that out, it looks like it's 40 something days. So all of these numbers, my real world experience of what I'm seeing in the markets I'm shopping in, I have what looks like 4 times the number of listings currently available than usual. And here's the other interesting part. This only, as I now look at this list, I see it's only a list of the properties that I categorized as desirable to me. If I change this so that I'm also displaying the ones that I trashed, let's see how many more that adds to the list. What's the status here? If I flip over to the ones that I designated as I'm not interested in, there are another 36 listings that are currently active. Let's go ahead and call it 34 listings because 2 of them are currently contingent, meaning they have offers that have contingencies. So 34, more than double the number, are actually still out there active, with days on market ranging from 1 or 2 days all the way up to 189 days. And that one's actually in San Jose. So I tell you, when we look at this, I think that it is very interesting to look at this list and realize how much things have changed just in the last few months. Now, here's some other interesting stuff I thought I'd share with you that I've noticed. Reo Properties on the market. Does that sound like a little bit of a surprise? So I looked into this one a little bit more. There have been 2 Reo properties I've come across that are bank owned. Both of them have been held forever by the bank. They were just never put on the market. Now, remember what I said some banks would do. Now, we've seen plenty of banks sell off on their inventory at various peak points. And I would say that the banks who are currently still holding Reo properties that haven't sold are feeling like this is a peak. That's why they're selling it now. Now, this just went on the market 2 days ago. So does this sound now, and this is in a marketplace where the quote unquote sweet spot for a listing is May. Does it sound like this bank feels like selling it then is more optimal? Because it's a very relatively, from a bank standpoint, it's a relatively short period of time to hold on to it, to wait for that May date to come around. And that's true of both of these properties that have been held by the bank for a very long time and are just now going on the market. So for me, that sure does spell a softening. It spells, at least on some level, a shifting in terms of what buyers can expect and what sellers can expect in a real marketplace, at least from what I'm seeing from a ground truth standpoint. Now, we're going to take a quick break here, but we're going to come back and discuss this in a little bit more detail. And we're also going to talk about the 5 best and worst areas for investing, and we're going to talk about why they're the 5 best and worst according to this particular article. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We've been going through a little ground truth here. As I said over the last few shows, I feel like we're at a pivot point. It feels like things are changing. And I've talked about articles that have been giving me that feeling that all this seems very familiar in terms of times in the past where suddenly we've seen the market make a change one direction or another. My ground truth experience here in my marketplace is absolutely backing that up. And just to sort of calibrate you, I already told you how small this list on an ongoing basis was. I usually never had more than 5 to 7 properties that were active, that meet my search criteria, that were in the mix. It might range, there might be 5, there might be 6, 7, 8, but usually is that kind of a thing. It was rolling up and down. And by and large, the time that it was taking for properties to get sold was 2 weeks or more, simply because agents were requesting that offers not come in until after they'd been on the market for a couple of weeks. In just about every case, even these properties down in Gilroy, I was seeing multiple offers. And the proof is in the pudding. I submitted, over the last year, I've probably submitted, a handful, maybe a little more than a handful, 6 or 7 offers. A couple of them sight unseen, and just made them contingent on a visual inspection. So, and all of those got turned down. And when I would follow up, it was, we had multiple offers and yours was too low, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I'm finding is, as I mentioned, I went and visited properties on Friday, and I have been getting calls from all 3 of those listing agents, really hoping that I've got an offer to bring in. And when I would chat with them, there's no offers floating around. But I had one agent tell me, one person was talking like they were going to make an offer this weekend. Well, and of course, nothing materialized. That property is still on the market today. And I got a follow-up email from that agent today asking if I wanted to reconsider the possibility of making an offer because they didn't get the offer they expected over the weekend. This all feels like a very soft marketplace. It feels like, and I'm interested to see if this is something that continues to last. Now, as I've mentioned before, I'm in that position where I want to increase my cash flow on a month-to-month basis. So one of my strategies is to sell the home I'm currently in, purchase a home, move into it, and have it be a home that's less expensive than the one I'm currently in. And then I can either buy 2 properties, live in one and rent out the other, or I can have ridiculously awesome cash flow per month and be able to relatively quickly recoup enough cash to make an investment in my next property. And then just on an ongoing basis, continue to have that great cash flow going on a month-to-month basis. So I'm kind of torn on which way I want to go. But the key there is picking my spot for selling this home. Now, one good thing that I did discover is that I can qualify to purchase another home without selling this one. All I would need to do is to have a signed lease agreement with a tenant before escrow closes on purchasing my other home, and everybody would be fine with that. So there's that to keep in mind too. And something you might want to consider as a strategy. Even if it's not something you're thinking about actively doing, talk to your lender. Now, here's the interesting part. You would think this would be a difficult thing to find, right? You need to go find a very specialized lender, someone who's familiar with investor situations. This is Quicken Loans I've been dealing with. This was a phone call, and I had a pre-approval letter an hour later that I can print up for any property that I want to generate it for. So extremely easy to do this. It'll depend clearly on your profit your monthly income versus your expenses. It'll depend on your credit rating and all those kinds of wonderful things. But Quicken Loans didn't even bat an eye. It wasn't like, oh, well, let us look into it, see what we can do for you. They had programs available right there at their fingertips. So definitely keep that in mind as you're shopping around. Now, next on my hit list today was an article from CBS Money Watch, the 5 best and worst U.S. real estate markets. And they I liked this article because they actually gave a little bit of specifics in terms of things that you could pay attention to that could help you not just work off of this list, but then evaluate areas within your sphere of influence. Maybe you're not comfortable considering going to one of these far-flung cities that we've talked about before. So I always love it when we can take something like this and translate it into a strategy that you can use anywhere. Instead of me saying, go to Phoenix and go to this area and look for investment properties, I can say, these are things that are happening in Phoenix that you should be aware of to translate into a useful tool that you can apply anywhere. Because I'll tell you what, that's really where power comes in terms of being able to make better decisions in real estate, is being able to take a lesson from one area and translate it into something you can use in another area. Now, in considering this data, the article starts off saying, quote, investors and homeowners looking for the next hot property market should keep an eye on 2 trends: jobs and affordability. And I don't think that's a hard one to figure out. Jobs, absolutely. Jobs has always been at the top of our list when we've talked about different areas, analyzing them, figuring out if it makes sense or not. Affordability is absolutely in the top 5, and most likely does come as number 2. And it really just depends on what kind of jobs we're talking about, right? Here in Silicon Valley, based on what folks make in high tech, if you're looking to buy an investment property in an area that would cater very strongly to folks in the high tech industry, affordability might take a little bit of a back seat to proximity to these high tech jobs, right? Because you're going to see these folks with a higher income, which may offset the affordability a bit. But again, it's affordability in the context of who your target is, right? Does that make sense? So you're still making an affordability decision. You're just making it based on the kind of tenant that you're trying to be most attractive to. And so let's translate that, right? I brought up high tech because that's something that's big here. It tends to be something you can count on for a long time. They tend to be really good renters. They tend to not beat up your property, and they tend to stay there for a while. So that's one reason why I'm drawn to that. Now let's translate that. You need to figure out what kind of renter in your area fits that bill. Is it someone who works at some big insurance company in your town? Maybe you're in Des Moines, and one of the few things I know about Des Moines is there's a ton of insurance companies there. I could tell my funny story about Des Moines at some point, but it's almost as much sad as it is funny, so maybe I'll skip it this time. But in any event, it just depends on where you're at. Maybe you are someone who has a big engineering firm, like not engineering in terms of computer science, but engineering in terms of we design cars, planes, trains, whatever. Maybe that's what fits in your area. So you want to match your affordability decision with your jobs market in your area, then also bringing in proximity, right? That's just a smart way to do it. You're looking for a well of the kinds of tenants you want. They're going to take good care of your property, be easy to manage in terms of being a landlord, and that's just a good way to approach it. Now, that conclusion is at least the conclusion we talked about here from the article is according to new research from PwC and the Urban Land Institute, which on Wednesday published their annual Emerging Trends in Real Estate report. It's based on economic data and survey responses and interviews with property investors, developers, brokers, and other professionals involved in the real estate business. Let's see. Some of the cities that landed near the top of the list in past years have bumped down in this year's ranking because of affordability issues. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at. Let's see. And you know what? Let's just get into it. The rest of this isn't very sexy. One thing they do mention here, because everyone wants to talk about millennials, a vibrant millennial population may also indicate where home values could rise, given that the generation is now entering the real estate market. About half of all home buyers are younger than 36, according to Zillow. Now, remember what we were talking about a year ago? All these things in terms of folks cubby-holing the millennials. And what we're discovering is it had far less to do with being a millennial, although since millennials is an age group, I suppose you could argue that it's a millennial thing. It had more to do with the financial hardships and issues that they were dealing with than some sort of a generational decision to buy in a different way. It was a functional decision. It wasn't some sort of a, we were raised differently, so we decide things this way kind of dynamic. It was, we can't afford it. We've got to live in mom's basement. We're too saddled with debt brand X or whatever the problem might have been. So again, it wasn't so much a millennial thing. It was a what's going on in your life relating to your debt and your ability to pay things type of a thing. And I guess it just sort of dovetailed in nicely because now we're hearing the opposite. We're hearing now that we're seeing millennials now jumping in. We've seen a lot of jump in first-time buyers. We talked about that earlier in the week. So anyway, all right, so let's go with best. These are the best locations for in terms of real estate markets. And this is aimed squarely between the eyes of investors. So, and what I'm going to say here is if it's attractive for investors, it's also attractive for buyers because one of the aspects that investors are looking for, and I know it's what I look for, is I sometimes make up my own terms for this stuff, but basically it's what I call market momentum, right? It's appreciation, right? How much appreciation can I expect from this property? And the momentum is defined by surveying the neighborhood. Are we seeing tons of, is the neighborhood on the rise? Are we seeing more and more people remodeling their homes, a lot more pride of ownership? Are we seeing well-manicured lawns? What's going on, right? And what are other things? Is there a revitalization of the community in general? Is the downtown area going through sort of a rebuild itself, sort of rediscovering its best parts and moving forward with that? These are all things that can play into making those good decisions, and not just as an investor in real estate, but also as a buyer. Let's see. So again, number 5 is Los Angeles. While affordability is an issue in Los Angeles, its economy is growing and expanding beyond its traditional entertainment base into areas like technology. Research universities located in the city are also boosting the economy. Total employment in Los Angeles is forecast to grow by 1.9% in the next year, slightly ahead of the national average of 1.5%. The median home value in Los Angeles stands at $590,400 and is projected to rise 1.7% in the next year, according to Zillow. While that may seem expensive, it's still a relative value compared with San Francisco, where Zillow says median home values stand at $1.1 million. I think Los Angeles is a super interesting opportunity, but I think simply saying Los Angeles is very misleading. My take on it is this is about submarkets in terms of where you're going to get the most lucrative stuff. And my instinct is to first say go west. The further west you can get and be in Los Angeles, the more desirable it's going to be. I'd actually love to talk to somebody who's really familiar with the Los Angeles marketplace. I know I've got one guy who's just awesome. We've actually had him on the show before prior to it being on a Monday through Friday basis, who I'd love to invite back on. I'll see if maybe he's down for it. He's actually got his own show, if I'm not mistaken, that he's still doing. So maybe we'll do a cross-pollination there. Number 4 on the list is Seattle. This northwestern city, and remember, we're counting down the best locations. This northwestern city is also becoming less affordable. It ranks high on the list because of favorable economic trends, such as faster than average job growth and a higher proportion of millennial residents. Tech hiring has been competitive in Seattle, where infotech workers earn $10 more an hour than the national average, the report finds. The combination of strong job growth and rising incomes is projected to push household formation up in 2017, which will increase demand for both single and multifamily housing. The median home value in Seattle is $594,600. It's forecast to jump 6.4% in the next year, according to Zillow. Now, we've talked about Seattle before, and I got to be honest, I don't share the enthusiasm for Seattle that an awful lot of these articles do. For my money, because of the layout, because of what happens with traffic and flows of people, I think it's a super dicey marketplace. However, if you go beyond Seattle, if you just decide, you know what, I'm not going to worry about downtown Seattle where the hipness is. I'm going to go to Redmond. I'm going to go to some of those areas just east and southeast of Seattle. I think there are some excellent opportunities there. But again, it's one of those places where I would feel a much heavier burden of getting ground truth than maybe in some other areas. It's just one of those ones where I think that there are some very subtle things that make life better or worse. And you absolutely don't want to find yourself investing in an area where for some reason that it isn't obvious when you are first looking at the area, makes people want to find a different housing option because of that. So just keep that in mind, and as a much more obvious example, and that I think actually kind of relates to the point I'm making here about Seattle. I was talking about Hollister. I've been looking at, and Hollister is a city that is way out there, but still a bedroom community for Silicon Valley. When prices were at their worst, there were people from Hollister driving all the way in to go work at places like Apple and Cisco who were driving. It's like an hour and a half one way to get from Hollister to get into Silicon Valley. And people were doing it because the prices made sense. And I was talking recently about how prices in Hollister had gotten to such a point that it was ridiculous. I had actually helped a buyer purchase in Hollister, and I couldn't believe there were multiple offers and there was so much competition. As soon as prices become reasonable at all, the very first thing people are going to want to do is bail the hell out of Hollister and head up to at least places like Gilroy and Morgan Hill where they can cut an hour off of their commute, or at least 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Those are the kinds of situations you don't want to be in. You don't want to be in that canary in a coal mine community that's going to be the first one to take the hit when a market turns around. You want to be in a marketplace that at least maintains a certain level of stability even when the market takes a hit. And that's math you can do. That's research you can do. Simply look back at the downturn. Data should be available for you to see what happened to home prices and values and in all these different areas. Just make sure and pay attention to that and go back that far. Do not let any agents you're working with only show you the last 5 years. You want to see what happens when the poop hits the fan with these communities. So you can see, at least get a feel for the level of effect it had last time this kind of stuff occurred. Number 3 on our list, Portland, Oregon. While hipsters may want to preserve Portland's oddball charm, it's increasingly becoming a haven for real estate investors. Oregon's largest city is benefiting from strong economic and demographic growth. The population of millennials is expected to increase by more than 10% over the next 5 years, compared with a 2.6% increase for the U.S. as a whole. Housing in Portland has grown more expensive. The median home value is $394,900, with home values predicted to rise 6.4% in the next year. So you blend a 10% increase in millennials, which we have now seen recently are showing a willingness to jump in there. And remember, they were making up a huge chunk of the first-time buyers over the last, The data was over the last year, so a big change at the end of this year. This was a third quarter of 2016 change that we saw. So we're seeing this is a place where that group is drawn to at a greater level than other parts of the country, and they're in a buying mood. Or at least they're starting to enter into a buying mood. So I could see where Portland would be an amazing place to potentially invest. Maybe lean a little bit more towards buy and flip, just because if everyone's in a buying mood, that usually means the market's going to go on an upswing. So go to some of the older neighborhoods, improve those properties, make them far more marketable, and maybe reap a profit there. But I also think you'd still benefit because of the draw of some of these other jobs that are happening in Portland. I think also doing the rental would be a good call as well. It just depends on which one the numbers point to and which one you're most attracted to in terms of strategies. Number 2, Dallas-Fort Worth. And I'm hearing a ton about Dallas-Fort Worth in terms of folks who contact me from there or contact me about going there. Some of them who live here and they're looking to relocate. Some of them through the show are talking to me about Dallas. The Texas city came out of the financial crisis in better shape than many other American cities. Real estate in the metropolitan area have largely sidestepped the boom and bust cycle that it has suffered in the past. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is perceived as a business-friendly environment that offers an attractive cost of doing business, an adequate and well-educated workforce, and world-class transportation access by air, rail, and road. Median home prices in Dallas is $153,900, the most affordable among the top 5, although Zillow predicts that home prices will rise 8.3% in the next year. Those numbers alone should make Dallas at least something you consider in terms of your investment strategies. At $153,900, that's pretty amazing. Now, the only thing that turns me off about Dallas is I have been to Dallas a few times, and it is freaking hot. But remember, if you're doing this as an investment, you're not buying for where you want to live. You're buying for where someone else wants to live and then pay you for that privilege. So if you can get over that, if you can get over the fact that every once in a while you may have to go to Dallas Fort Worth to look in on your property, then maybe it's the place to go. But I'll tell you, that barrier to entry, that $153,900 as your barrier to entry for getting a home, that's a hard one to turn your nose up at. The only other thing I'd say is that air conditioning is ubiquitous in Texas in general. Everybody's got it. And energy costs aren't that bad there. What's really funny is, when you're running your air conditioning here in California, or you're running your heating, there's always what's the power bill going to be? And I can remember at the very worst, I think my power bill here at this house was something like, I think the worst month I ever had was $800, $900, which was ridiculous. When I was living in Florida for a while, air conditioning was on 24/7, and I don't think it was ever over $100 was my utility bill. And friends I have who live in Texas, same situation. Air conditioning's on 24/7, and their bills are relatively much lower than mine are here in California. In fact, mostly half as much as mine. So I don't know why I bothered to tell you that. So there you go. Number one on our list, and this doesn't surprise me at all. And it also doesn't surprise me that the two top cities are in Texas. Austin, Texas. And I would include some of the areas just outside Austin, including Round Rock, just to the north. Austin is another hipster capital that's quickly becoming a real estate haven. It has a growing millennial population. For all the same reasons Portland was popular. Burgeoning technology sector, and it's been burgeoning for a long time. Apple moved their technical support organization there way back in the early 90s. So this has been a trend that's been going on. I also believe Dell is there and Texas Instruments. Still, the cost of living has been rising, which may become an issue for workers. The median home value in Austin is $305,600, and Zillow predicts it to rise 3.5% in the next year. What the top cities have in common are, quote, favorable economics or favorable demographics. These are the things that are going on in Austin, that are going on in Buffalo. Millennials are a big key to Austin's success. The generation is 30% of the U.S. population, but in Austin, they are 35% of the population. So for the same reasons Portland sounds sexy, I think that we're going to see potentially a lot of growth in Austin because of the millennials, and now they're showing more interest and willingness to be those first-time buyers everyone's been hoping that they would become. So if it was me, I think my number one go-to place on this list would be number two, probably Dallas, Fort Worth, simply because that's just too sweet of a deal. And if we do see the increases in property values in the time frame that they're talking about, not only going to enjoy that market momentum or the appreciation to improve your values, but judging by the amount of opportunities there, you're not going to have any trouble getting your place rented. Now let's jump on to the worst. Number 5 worst is Virginia Beach, Norfolk. Now what's really funny is we've talked about Virginia Beach before. Virginia Beach was on a list of some of the best places to invest in just 5 months ago. They comment that this metropolitan area has a mixed story when it comes to jobs, with employment growth below the national average. Yet the jobs in the region are leaning toward higher paying professions, which is positive. The median home value in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area is $253,200, with Zillow predicting that home values will rise 2.4% in the next year. Number 4, worst, Providence, Rhode Island. Rhode Island city this Rhode Island city is viewed as a lost cost alternative to Boston and New York. Population is growing at a much slower rate than the U.S. overall, which inhibits growth, and it's projected to lose millennials over the next 5 years. In many top housing markets, the number of younger Americans is projected to increase. The median home value in Providence is $163,800, and home prices are expected to rise 5% in the next year. I don't know why you'd look at Providence when you've got a place like Dallas Fort Worth that you could potentially be looking at. Number 3 on our list of worst, Deltona, Daytona Beach. Another one that's been on our list of good investment opportunities. The economy in the Daytona Beach region is being driven by population growth, especially among older Americans, rather than economic development. The millennial cohort is also lower than typical, with only 24% of the city's residents counted as part of this younger generation, compared with 30% for the U.S. as a whole. Median home value in Daytona Beach is $114,900, with Zillow predicting that home prices will rise 5.7% in the next year. Just given that, I'm not sure I have a huge problem with Deltona, Daytona. In fact, so far of the locations we've talked about that I would still consider looking at, even though it's on the worst list, would be this location. I think one thing they're doing is giving an inordinate amount of weight to where the millennials are going to be. I get that that we're really pushing for this time for these folks to jump into the marketplace and become first-time buyers. But let's think about who's going to be renting in a town like this. You're not going to find folks who are beating up your property every day. You're going to get folks who are probably going to move in and stay there. They're probably going to take very good care of your home and put very little mileage on it in terms of how much abuse. Those all spell wonderful things to me. And as long as you're providing a comfortable, clean, well-maintained property, you're going to be rented, I would guess, most of the time. All right, worst, number 2. Hartford, Connecticut. It's a good example of a market where the public and private sectors are at odds. The state is expected to cut jobs to cope with the budget deficit, while private sector employment growth is mostly in lower paying fields. Quote, industry participants have been hinting at moving to alternatives offering a lower cost of doing if the physical climate and business environment do not improve. The median home price in Hartford is $102,100, while prices are expected to increase 1.6% in the next year. Just the uncertainty of what is going to happen between public and private here, it sounds like businesses are thinking, I'm moving out because they're stinging us. And whenever you see a city that's having money problems, or if they're cutting jobs, or they have budget issues, the very first place they go and look to take more money from the public is usually business-related fees or taxes. That kills real estate eventually down the line. It's an inherited killing because they're killing the underpinnings of what makes real estate robust. So given that kind of a policy and given that kind of trouble, this would be the kind of community to continue to look at and monitor, just because the barrier to entry is currently so low. But you'd want to look for that sweet spot. Where have things finally looked like they're about to turn that corner? Maybe when they're they have gotten past that point where they're going to continue to beat up businesses with additional fees and turn it around a little bit and make it more attractive, because that's the way it tends to go. It tends to be a boomerang effect. Once you start to see those kinds of discussions happening in the State House, that's the time to maybe move back into Hartford, Connecticut. Number 1 worst city, Buffalo, New York. It's an upstate New York City, ranks at the bottom of the list, with the report noting that its economy, quote, has failed to build any positive momentum. An aging population will add to its issues, while population loss in its urban core is also challenging. Quote, the city has programs dedicated to revitalization of the urban core, but in the near term, residential and retail growth will likely be confined to relatively small pockets. The median home value in Buffalo metropolitan region is $134,000, while Zillow predicts home prices will rise 2.4% in the next year. So, while it's the worst, it sounds like the city is spending money on various areas. If you could focus in on those areas that are quote confined to relatively small pockets, find one of those pockets, and you could find yourself riding a wave that could really boost the desirability of your property and your ability to get not only higher rents, but also get more in appreciation. So don't necessarily look at this list of worst markets as, man, I totally got to avoid this. Look at it as these are areas that at some point could represent an excellent opportunity. None of these sounded like a completely lost cause, but if you let's say you like one of these for whatever reason, maybe you're near it, maybe you come from there and you live somewhere else, but you'd feel very comfortable owning an investment property there. Keep these on your radar. Go to Realtor.com and create a search for properties that you would think would fit your strategy, and let them keep coming in your inbox, and just keep that search active. And maybe, because we're in the wonderful age of the internet, maybe you get news based on about these cities. Maybe you add that to whatever news service online you're using. Add news about what's going on in Buffalo, New York, or any of these other cities, and use that. Try to see when things start to make that turn, because you know these guys are already down. They're already got a bad rap. A lot of folks are avoiding them. Find out, identify the key things that are a problem in these communities or in these cities. And when those things are about to get overcome, or you start to see that momentum that the change is coming, that's potentially your time to join in. Take advantage of what is going to be a very low market compared to the projections of where that community is going to go. So always look for opportunities where you can find it. And it's not always just in the top 5. Remember, a lot of times we'll find that when you go with those top 5 communities, you've already missed the bus, right? The great time to get in on that investment has already sort of come and gone. Austin is a perfect example. We were talking about Austin here on this show over 2 years ago. I wanted to actually do a trip out there and see if we could find a place. Now, that never materialized, but boy, was I right about what was going to happen. And I specifically wanted to go to Austin and to Round Rock. And if we would have, if I had gone and done what I talked about doing and done more than just talk about it, I'd be a lot happier today. So when you spot those opportunities and you're confident in what they're going to do, or you're confident in what direction things are going to go, just jump in and make it happen. It's just about doing good groundwork, about getting good information and then acting on it. All right, folks. I hope we have traded your time for some good info. I feel like this was a good one. And if any of these struck your fancy, go ahead and start doing those first steps of what we've talked about in terms of what you want to do about analyzing properties or analyzing investment areas, and start getting that ground truth internalized, start digesting it yourself. I really do appreciate you making the show a part of your day. And as always, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time.